That's fine. And let's admit everybody. Okay, so a very warm welcome to the inaugural EcoSikhUK webinar to celebrate World Sikh Environment Day and the Sikh New Year, which both fall on the 14th of March every year. My name is Dr. Hardeep Singh. I'm a member of EcoSikhUK. This conference is being recorded. If you don't wish to be recorded, if you could switch off your video, please, right now. Thank you. Today, we have a great list of speakers who will share their knowledge and wisdom to educate and to motivate us to take action, positive action, to act for Mother Earth. The structure of the webinar is as follows. Amandeep Kaur of EcoSikhUK will commence with a brief reflection. This will be followed by 2 presentations. Then there will be a 3-minute video about the amazing Guru Nanak Sacred Forest project being led by EcoSikh India. Then there'll be a 10-minute break. After the break, there will be 2 presentations, followed by an audience poll and a Q&A session with our speakers, and then we'll wrap up. If you can post your questions and reflections in the chat function during the webinar, we will then collate them and ask the questions to our speakers. Finally, a big thank you to our great speakers for taking out your time today, and a massive thank you to you, the participants, for making this webinar possible. If I could request all to keep your microphones on mute, except for all the speakers. Thank you. So, Amandeep, if you'd like to start with the with your reflection on EcoSikhUK. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, everybody, and greetings to you all. I'm Amandeep Kaur, and I'll be saying a few words about what EcoSikhUK does. It started in the USA. For those of you who don't know, EcoSikh is a global organization. Dr. Rajwant Singh, who we're delighted to have in our audience today, is established it and achieved great things. We have EcoSikh teams all over the world. And in the UK, we would say that we have a unified interfaith response to help combat climate change, global warming, and biodiversity loss. While our roots are embedded in Sikh teachings and spreading the quotes from Gurbani, we must say that unified interfaith response is a key word for us, because the first Guru did talk about Ik-Oankar, and the Ik is the oneness that unites everyone all over the world and all living things and beings. And it's the divine light that transcends all race and religion. The line that you can see there, the Punjabi, the Gurmukhi way of saying it would be Pavan Guru Pani Pita Mata Tat Mahat. Mother Earth, the greatest mother of all, and today on Mother's Day to be celebrating in this way, in this event, is a great honor for us. And so the next question would be, how do we achieve these things? How does EcoSikhUK plan on doing this? Have the next slide, please. The way we do this is collaborating, networking, sharing resources, sharing knowledge, sharing successes. It's not always common for successes to be shared. And it's only when we do that and we see and celebrate each other that we can learn. So we are members of Faith for the Climate. It's a great organization where we meet monthly with other faith groups, and we learn more about the fact that we're more united than divided, especially when it comes to nature. And all these names that you can see here are organizations that we are working with, and there are organizations that aren't environment kind of based, but they have work streams. So one of these examples could be the UK Women's Faith Network. They've been inviting us to a webinar. A Buddhist organization, Centre for Applied Buddhism, invited us to speak about environment. And it's great to have Sikh representation on this topic. Sikh Alliance Yorkshire are another organisation that wants us to do a series of webinars with them to talk about the Sikh perspective on climate change. There's a lot of exciting collaborations coming up, and one that an event that we should all really be aware of, and most of you may well be, it's the COP26, which is coming up in November, taking place in Glasgow. So the EcoSikhUK newsletter aims to help people understand the information that comes out about climate change, which isn't always easy to understand. And we try and break it down for you so that all the different news avenues can be covered as much as we can to get the information across to you. Canal River Trust have been amazing in some of the events that we've had, and I'll explain a little bit more about the events at the end. Next slide, please. So the first Guru Nanak Dev Ji encouraged a very simple way of living, and EcoSikhUK's aim is to kind of bring those teachings back to modern day life and see if we can apply them. Guru Har Rai Ji, the seventh Guru, was particularly appreciative of the medicinal properties of herbs and plants. Girdpur Sahib, which is a town that he established, had many parks, fruit-bearing trees, attracting lots of birds, a very idyllic place to live. And it was because of Guru Har Rai Ji that World Sikh Environment Day came about. Eco-Sikh in Washington, they approached Amritsar about this and said that on the 14th of March, which was the day of Guru Har Rai Ji becoming Guru, let's have World Sikh Environment Day. So that's what we celebrate every year on this day. The next slide, please. Guru Har Rai Ji's one of his beautiful quotes is, "Man breaks flower with one hand and offers it with another, yet the flower perfumes both hands." And that's the kind of philosophy that we should be celebrating, that nature is unconditional in its love for us, and we need to do more to protect it. A lot of Gurdwara, places of worship for Sikhs, were built alongside water and with nature alongside it, and that's what we want to do in the UK as well, encourage Gurdwara to use the spaces around them and make them greener and more kind of contemplative spaces rather than just functional. Can I have the next slide, please? This is a massive project going on in Punjab, and I must mention Ravneet Singh here. He's the person that came to the UK and met with us and got the team together. He connected us all. We're going to present a video from him later talking about this. But on the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, we, Eco-Sikh, set the aim to plant 1 million trees around the world. And he'll give an update on the progress made. But this is a very ambitious aim and a very important one. Can I have the next slide, please? So we are all aware, possibly all of us, aware about the farmers' protests currently going on in India. And what I'd like to highlight here from an Eco-Sikh perspective is the environmental degradation, the environmental impact, which links in with the social injustice that people perceive is going on right now. So we talk about the Green Revolution, some of the things that came about, the way the land was managed. And Remet Riot, our speaker today, is going to tell a little bit more about this. Next slide, please. So EcoSikhUK we're trying to do a lot more, and with COVID and lockdown, it's been difficult, but we have a few pictures of events that were going on before it. A canal cleanup was very successful, led to Green Flag Award being achieved for that, which was a really, really good achievement. You can see a picture in the middle there of Bhutta Prasad being distributed, and you can find out more about this on our website. It was Dr. Hardeep Singh and Darby that did this kind of innovative way of giving prasad, which is long living, when people take the plants home and actually see them grow. We've had newsround articles with and videos with children at a Gurdwara in Derby where plastic was banned. Tree planting took place. We've had community projects where church and the Gurdwara got together, and we'll be showing this video at the end, so please do stay around for that. And this is just an example and a snapshot of the kind of things that we did. But one of the things I'd like to mention is our youth. Our youth are so important to us. And we did an event at a Gurdwara where we had a youth day, and we did the whole workshop, crafts, everything was around environment. And some of the children said it was actually one of the best youth days that they'd ever attended, because it's a topic that isn't talked about very much. So debates were held about animal testing and things that we should really be talking about a lot more. So I'll finish on that note and pass over to Hardeep Singh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I think that was a fantastic introduction to and reflection on EcoSikhUK work. So it's a great pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, who you will have seen on TV during parliamentary debates. Mr. Thanmandeep Singh Desi, MP for Slough and Shadow Railways Minister, is a graduate of UCL Oxford and Cambridge universities, and is the first ever turbaned Sikh in any European Parliament. Today, he'll be talking about why it's crucial for Sikhs and for all communities to care for the environment. Tan, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hardeep, for that wonderfully warm introduction. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure to follow Amandeep. And first of all, I want to pay tribute to the amazing work of Eco-Sikh UK, but as well as what is being done globally. In fact, it was a few years ago now that I met up with Ravneet Singh, who came to see me in Parliament to explain about their vision as to what they wanted to do in terms of their proposed planting of Guru Nanak sacred forests within the Punjab, as well as explain to me what colleagues like Dr. Rajwant Singh in the US and others were doing, and how they wanted my support to help promote that as well. And I was very, very pleased to lend my support, because I think it is extremely important that we support such initiatives. So well done to Eco-Sikh for all the amazing work that you're doing. And I am constantly being kept updated by the likes of Ravneet and others. So that's why it is a double pleasure to be able to join all of you for this virtual event. Look, in terms of why it's so important for us, as was mentioned by Amandeep, we've got COP26 later this year within the UK in Glasgow. And it is very, very important that those in advanced nations, that they do more than others globally, because just the 1% of the richest people within the world, they emit more carbon emissions. They are accountable for more carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions than the 50% of the poorest people globally. Now that should be a matter of shame for all of us and make us change our ways, change our behavior, so that we can have a better impact on the environment and on our planet, and that we help others through technology and through the way that we go about our day-to-day lives. Whether it's in our own small way, as to be using less plastic, to be trying to conduct ourselves in more environmentally friendly ways. I'll give you one example, is that over a year ago now, that I decided that, look, I needed to switch over from my petrol diesel emitting car to an electric car, and that's exactly what I did. And I am so pleased, because now not only is that saving me money, I am going about my day-to-day business, and I do get around quite a bit within the UK. It may be a different scenario in the pandemic, but overall I'm seeing that I not only am saving money, but I'm not emitting toxic fumes into the air that we all breathe. So one thing that I think that we should all be doing is to be gradually moving over to either, if we drive around a lot, in terms of an electric car, if it's a case of doing more cycling and walking, using more public transport, whether it's rail or bus and so on. And also within our localities. So some of the amazing organizations that you've teamed up with, my job as the MP for Slough is to be going about and looking at the incredible work that they're doing, but to make sure that we incorporate that into how our town is run. So within Slough, we've now initiated, for example, electric buses. So rather than the petrol diesel buses and vehicles, that we shift more and more of the vehicles used by the council to be electric. And just as you are going about planting trees, it gives me also great pleasure that our former mayor, Councillor Sohal, that to celebrate the 550th birth anniversary of the founder of the Sikh faith, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, that he also embarked that within his mayoral year, he went about planting 550 trees within Slough as well. So just to make sure that we green up the environment in which we live. Now, nationally, it is also important that we make our contribution. So as the Shadow Rail Minister, what I've been trying to do is to hold the government to account, to make sure that we actually decarbonize our public transport. So we have been pushing for more electrification of our rail network. Unfortunately, at the moment in the UK, only 38% of our rail network is electrified, and we are falling far behind the likes of Germany, France, Italy, and others who have managed to electrify the vast majority of their railways. In fact, we are very, very behind the likes of Belgium and so on, who are at around more than 80%. That is very important, because what happens is that as we are going about via train or moving more freight from the lorries and onto trains, is that has less of a detrimental impact on our environment. And it's amazing that countries like Germany, what they're doing, if we look at our European neighbors, is that they are investing billions of euros into their green agenda. So, for example, Germany has pledged 40 billion euros, and that is what we are pushing the government, that not only do we push them to declare a climate emergency within the UK, but that we say that we should at least be matching our European colleagues to be making sure that we have a more of a sustainable and environmentally friendly system within our country. Now, some of the other things as Sikhs, now I know many of you are Gursikhs, that for us, we should be taking that message out into the Gurdwaras, into places of communities, wherever the community gathers, whether it's at kabaddi tournaments, whether it's at football tournaments, and to be putting out that message for the environment. And I think that the best way that likes of us can do that is, as was displayed very eloquently by Amandeep, is to be using the Guru's message. So, as Guruji told us himself, Pavan Guru Pani Pita Mata Tat Mahat Divsrat Doi Dai Daya Khele Sagal Jagat. So that, it cannot be more clearer for us as to where the founder of the faith, where the Gurus themselves, how much of an importance they placed on the environment. So if they are referring to the earth as the mother, if they are referring to the air which we all breathe as the Guru itself, Pavan Guru Pani Pita, so water as the father, that's where we all play and we all interact. That is why it's incumbent on every single Sikh to be making sure that they do their part. And in terms of what Eco-Sikh have been doing in the Punjab, it sometimes pains me to think that the land wherein there was so much greenery and forests that we have managed, or not we, but the Punjabis there have managed to, in order to either till the land for agriculture and other purposes, that we hardly see any forests around. So it's incredibly important that they are doing that within the Punjab as well. But even in the UK here, that I being a Labour MP, but we as a party, we have pledged to plant billions of trees and also to rewild certain areas within our country. And that's incredibly important that we all push collectively our own government. And for those of you that aren't in the UK, that are joining us from elsewhere, that please do write articles within your local newspapers, within your national newspapers, put things on your social media, on your blogs, and to be writing to your local members of parliament to say that this is incredibly important to me, and I think that to be a good human, that we should be paying more heed to what we are doing to the environment, because unfortunately, at present, as many climate change activists and others have very eloquently advised us, is that humans are decimating other species. Since within the last 50 years, we've managed to almost bring to an extinction about almost 60% of other mammals, fish, and species. That is the rate at which we are not just overfishing, but in terms of the cull of species and the cull of forests, whether it's rainforests, we all see what's happening, for example, with the Amazon and within Brazil and so on. That unfortunately, that has already happened in many countries across the world. But it's something that we need to work collectively upon because if we are to encourage some of those less industrializations, then we need to be incentivizing them that, look, if you keep your forest, if you keep those areas which are the green lungs for the whole planet, then we will be helping you in other ways. And that's, I think, part of what the climate, the Paris Climate Accord is all about. And I'm very, very pleased that the US is, thanks to the new President Joe Biden, that he has put that front and center, that the US is now back in the Paris Climate Accord, and like many of the European nations, that they have now gone from a position of virtual climate change deniers to pumping in billions of dollars to make sure that they have that greening up of their economy, as in producing millions of electric cars and investing in that infrastructure, just as we should be investing in that infrastructure here. So putting in more electric charging vehicle charging points across the country as well. So I know that there is so much that we can discuss upon this, because it is such an important topic, not just for us, but for our children and grandchildren as well, that if we want to leave them with a better planet than we have obtained, then we owe it to them to make that positive change. Because if we don't, unfortunately, we will see rising temperatures and also rising sea levels as well, not to mention more respiratory diseases for the likes of us if we don't go about changing our ways. But once again, I'd like to thank all of you for your support of EcoSikh, and I wish EcoSikhUK the very best for the future as well. And please give my regards to Rajwant Singh and Ravneet Singh, who I can't see on the call today. I can see many other good friends like Gurch Randhawa and others, but as I'm looking around, I can't see them. But well done to also the likes of Prabjot and Amritpal and all of the people who are involved. And I'm looking forward to hearing the good views later on of the likes of Mr. Yadavinder Malli and Rahmat Riyad and other speakers. And thank you for inviting me, and more power to you both.
And thank you very much indeed for a fantastic talk. You've covered so much there in a very short space of time, much food for thought. And as you say, we're at a critical tipping point, and what you've mentioned, we've got to do more of as a human race. Otherwise, you know, we're running into trouble. So thank you so much for your time. Tremendous talk. So our second speaker today is Helena Craig. She's a retired lawyer who specialized in race equality, diversity and inclusion. Since retirement, she has been involved in conservation, supporting her 18-year-old daughter, Maya Rose Craig, aka Bird Girl, with their nature camps, race equality in nature conferences and campaigning. She's the chair of Black to Nature, aiming to make nature ethnically diverse. Her talk today is Achieving Equal Access to Nature for Minority Communities. I'm just going to share the screen now. Okay, Helena, all yours.
Great, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you very much. You know, just listening to the last two speakers, it's been really interesting to find out more about your projects and what you've been doing, and it's absolutely amazing. Really loving hearing about it. So I'm chair of Black to Nature, and just a little bit about you know, why I'm here or why I've come to be here. So I've been interested in nature, only since I met my husband, and I grew up going out into parks or green spaces on the edge of Bristol, where I grew up with my family, playing cricket and playing football, and just going to woods and just doing stuff, because there was 5 of us, and I think my parents needed to get us out of the house at times. But it wasn't until probably about 5 years ago that I realized that actually what we did growing up was engaging with nature, because I was so focused on how many white British people engage with nature, which is sort of going out into the countryside or to nature reserves, looking at wildlife, identifying it, you know, making a note maybe. And so I think for me, it was sort of really eye-opening to understand that actually you can enjoy nature in a different way. So Maya Rose is now 18, and I'm sort of stepping in for her because she's pretty busy, but she set up Black to Nature. And I have gone from being a retired lawyer interested in going out and being in nature to someone combining like the fight against racism, I suppose, with that pastime. And so if any of you have time, there's some links at the end, but it'd be great for you to look Maya up. She's doing a huge amount of work in this area. So, you know, my girls growing up in nature had lots of opportunities that other young people from minority ethnic backgrounds haven't had. And I think that when Maya Rose got to about 12, 13, she wanted to share her love of nature with other people, with other young people. And it was really at that point where, maybe if you go to the next slide actually, that she realized that there was no one like her, really, no one who looked like her or her mum or sister out in nature. And not like not a few, you know, only a few people, but literally no one. And, you know, looking at websites for conservation organisations or magazines that come through the door, you know, everyone in them was white British. And I think that, you know, there was a sort of disconnect between herself and her Bangladeshi family, where whilst they sort of respected what we did, her cousins would sort of take the mick, and it would be like, oh, you know, why would you want to go and do that? That's boring. So it sort of, I suppose that she felt, and you know, and her sister felt that going out into nature was something that our communities didn't want to do, weren't interested in, and that's why they went out in that space. And it was only really, you know, at the next stage in her awakening, I suppose, that she realized that that's just not true at all. And the reason that we have so few of our young people, so few of our families going out into the countryside is because they're not welcome, or they don't feel that it's somewhere for them. And it's because of exclusion, not because of a lack of desire. Yes, you know. So if you go to the next slide. So this is just a group of students from UWE. But I think Maya will say that it's when she realised, seeing this post online from someone she knew, that people can connect with nature and the environment in different ways. It doesn't have to be, you know, in the way that Darwin and Wallace, you know, engaged with nature, which also included lots of shooting and hunting. So in 2015, if you can go into the next slide, please. What happened was Maya Rose found out about camps in America, and I haven't got very long actually. I'm running over, but basically she set up a camp, and the only people that signed up were white British boys from rural backgrounds. So she did what she could to get people, young people, to come to her camp from inner cities. And what she found was, if you can go to the next slide, they needed to be inspired, but that they all engaged with nature in different ways, all of them. And she's now run 10, 11 camps plus lots of day events. And she has had 100% success rate with engaging people with nature. Now, why is this important? Well, you know, if we go on to the next slide, I'll make these available, so I'm not going to talk about them all. But there are things like negative expectations of visiting somewhere that people feel isn't for them, being worried about it, being scared about it. So after her camps, she wrote to the 4 biggest NGOs. If you can just quickly go to the next slide. Yeah, with a very positive reaction, but you know, years on, not much has changed. So if you, the next slide, there's just a few stats which came out in 2016, but what it showed was 74% of non-visible minority ethnic children were taken out into a natural space. 74% of them were taken out at least once a week. So when you look at lower socioeconomic groups, that goes down by 10%. But when you look at minority ethnic young people, children 16 or under, that's 56%, 20% less than for white British children. So, you know, the next step was to set up a conference, which, you know, looked at mental health as well. And so on the next slide, you'll see that Bill Oddie came and to support this issue. And it was the first step in bringing it to the mainstream. So there are lots of barriers that were identified because we had lots of people from different communities come to this conference, as well as conservation organisations. And so you know, there were lots of issues that came up: poverty, lack of public transport, general society racism, fear of hate crime going into rural spaces, perception that the countryside is only for white elitist people. So if we can move on, the next slide, we're looking at sort of barriers again, and even just things like actually the next slide on from that, sorry, things like fear of outside influences, dislike of and fear of dogs, fear that your teenagers, if you let them go to the park alone, the police are going to identify them as trouble. You know, all of these kinds of things that white middle class parents don't have to think about. So we looked at some solutions. Myros came up with some very specific solutions, like using nature by stealth. So I'm going to quickly finish because because I've got the slides that we can share. But really, what I will end with is, why is any of this important? And what we need to be thinking about is that you can't care about something you don't know. So if you don't know about the planet, if you don't know about the wonderful wildlife and habitat, you know, around the globe, or even in places where your family came from ethnically, then why would you care about saving the planet? Why would that seem relevant to you? And so, you know, to make change, we've got to work from inside our communities. We need to make change, but we also need to challenge the environmental and conservation sector to change, to be inclusive, to be relevant to you know, our communities, and particularly our young people. So thank you very much. The last slide's got some contact details, but you know, I don't know if they can be shared, and so it's got a few links there. So sorry for overrunning.
No problem at all, Helena. That was an absolutely fascinating talk, and you've actually hit on some really crucial issues over here, which I'm sure are going to raise some really interesting questions. So I'd like to encourage the audience to post questions that are relevant to this particular talk, because this is a massive, massive topic. Because if we don't engage everybody in nature, then we're not going to be doing our job properly. It's a pan-human issue, and we've got to really get everybody involved. Myself, as a turban bearded Sikh, very overt and very, very visible. I've been bird watching for over 15 years, and I go to remote places, and my experience has been very, very positive in that I've had no issues with my appearance, but I can understand people who do. And so so Helena, thank you so much for a wonderful talk, and I'm sure it'll raise questions towards the queue at the end. Okay, so we're now in for a short treat. What follows now is a 3-minute video by Ravneet Singh of Eco-Sikh in India that illustrates the amazing Guru Nanak Sacred Forest Plantation project that is happening all over Punjab state, in other parts of India, and also in Pakistan. This is an illustration of what happens when hearts and minds align, and anything is definitely possible.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. First of all, I would like to congratulate the entire EcoSikhUK team for the work they have done and established in the UK. And today we are all together celebrating March 14, the Sikh Environment Day, and celebrating the legacy of the great Guru, Guru Har Rai Ji, and the work that he has done and showed us the path to fight the climate change. I would also like to share some insights of the Guru Nanak Sacred Forest project that we have started back in 2019 and transformed the belief system in Punjab. In 2019, when we were celebrating Guru Nanak Dev Ji's 550th birthday, we decided that we should create a patch of microforest of 550 trees in every village, creating those microforests, and we gave a call. And today I am thrilled that we have completed 303 such projects of 550 trees with the participation, rather extreme participation, of the Sikh community in Punjab and other states of India, and one forest in Pakistan as well. These forests were created using the Japanese Miyawaki methodology, and what we found out that these forests are 30 times dense, they grow 10 times faster and produce 30 times more oxygen, which means they sink 30 times more carbon as well. We have attracted so many birds, pollinators, butterflies, bumblebees, and so many insects and flies. The forests are now 15 to 20 feet tall in just 2 years of time. Under the Guru Nanak Sacred Forest project, EcoSikh has been able to conserve 92 native wild species of Punjab. And today, the trust and belief in this method and the proven results have motivated the entire Punjabis to uplift the level of this project. We started with 550 tree projects back in 2019, and today we are installing 11,000 tree mega project in 1 acre of land in Rajpura. And this is huge because people have invested their trust, they have seen the results, and they are going to make it bigger. And I also assure you that together we can create a microforest of 550 trees in any part of the world. I also propose the EcoSikhUK team that they should go for a pilot project in the UK, and Indian team is very committed to support in every way to get that forest planted remotely. Lastly, I should say that these forests are tiny temples for the birds and all the fauna that they attract. They get security, food, and shelter in these forests. So let's plant temples for nature.
So that was an incredibly inspirational video. You've seen the incredible work that's being done by Eco-Sikh in India. They are passionate about this project. Punjab has suffered a lot of environmental issues and is continuing to do so. And this is an attempt to reverse and to halt that environmental degradation. And it's working through people power, which is a tremendous, tremendous thing to be inspired by. So we're going to be having a short break now. You can guys get some teas and coffees. We're going to be recommencing at exactly 2:45. So what I'm going to be doing is during the break, I'm going to be playing playing a short video of some Sikh devotional music called Shabd Kirtan, with some nice backdrop of flowers, nature views, and some pictures of Sikh congregation planting trees in the National Youth Forest in Derbyshire during the 550th anniversary of the arrival of Guru Nanak. So please enjoy, and I'll hopefully see you around in what is now going to be in about 5 minutes. So yes, so I'm just going to share my screen now and have a break, and we'll see you very, very shortly. Let me just start that now. Right, let me just cancel that, sorry. Oops, do that again. Here we go. Okay. Oh no, that's the wrong one. Sorry, I do apologize. Let me start again. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
ऊंच अपार बेअंत स्वामी कौन जाने गुण तेरे ऊंच अपार बेअंत स्वामी कौन जाने अपार बेअंत स्वामी कौन जाने गुण तेरे कौन जाने गुण तेरे कौन जाने गुण तेरे कौन जाने गुण कौन जाने गुण तेरे ऊंच अपार बेअंत स्वामी कौन जाने गुण तेरे ऊंच अपार बेअंत स्वामी कौन जाने गुण तेरे 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 ऊंच अपार बेअंत स्वामी कौन जाने अपार बेअंत स्वामी कौन जाने गुण तेरे गावते उधरे सुनते उधरे बिन से पाप कनेरे गावते उधरे सुनते उधरे बिन से पाप कनेरे बिन से पाप ਅਪਾਰ ਬੇਅੰਤ ਸੁਆਮੀ ਕੌਣ ਜਾਣੇ ਗੁਣ ਤੇਰੇ ਊਚ ਅਪਾਰ ਬੇਅੰਤ ਸੁਆਮੀ ਕੌਣ ਜਾਣੇ ਗੁਣ ਤੇਰੇ ਕੌਣ ਜਾਣੇ ਗੁਣ ਤੇਰੇ।
Okay, so can you all hear me? Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
That's great. Okay, fine. So that was a short break showing some nice pictures of nature. Welcome back to the webinar. If you could go to menti.com as per the last slide, because we're going to be doing a poll after the next two speakers to get some audience participation going. But now we have a fantastic speaker. It's a great pleasure to introduce Yadvinder Singh Mully, Professor of Ecosystem Science at the University of Oxford, Fellow of the Royal Society and a Trustee of the Natural History Museum. His research focuses on how the natural world functions and how it is being changed by human activity and action, and how we can work with and restore nature to create a sustainable future. His talk today is titled The Urgency and Challenge of Nature Restoration. So I'm just going to share my screen now and start off. Here we go. So share. Yadvinder, can you see your presentation there?
Yeah, I can see it.
Wonderful. Yes, perfect. Yes, go ahead.
First, thank you for the invitation to speak here, and I've really enjoyed the first few talks and lots of material to think about there. Really fascinating. So it's really nice to engage with Eco-Sikh and with this community. So next slide, please.
Sorry. There you go.
Okay, like many of us during this year of lockdown, I've taken a lot of comfort in local nature, and I found both for my mental welfare and just for lots of reasons, it's been really comforting to be able to visit local nature and benefit from it. In the background, there is a photo of my woodland just near my house here, where I do a lot of research, Whiten Woods, which has been my sort of salvation in this last year. And in the foreground is an article I wrote that came out a couple of weeks ago in Psyche magazine about the experience of the importance of observing nature closely and why it matters so much in terms of global change. I'll post a link to this article in the chat after the talk. And clearly, many of us, whatever our ethnic background, community background, benefits from participation in nature and the wonders of the natural world, whether locally or internationally. But all is not well. Next slide, please. All is not well with nature. And you can look at a whole range of metrics for this. This is something that the WWF produced last year. But lots of these, when we look at biodiversity, any metric of biodiversity you want to, you see the wealth of the natural world is declining over time, and that decline has been accelerating in the last few decades. So while in many ways human welfare has increased, the welfare of the natural world has been in ongoing decline in every part of the world. So next slide, please. And there's lots of reasons for this. In some parts, it is the loss of pristine habitats to conversion to agriculture. These are areas that we work in Sabah in northern Borneo in Malaysia, where rainforest, super biodiverse tropical rainforest is being converted into oil palm plantations to provide oils and materials that go into many of our materials, both in the West and China and India and other places. Next slide. Another factor is the increasing intensification and application of chemicals and fertilizers, that some of which are necessary for yields, but the over application is causing a huge amount of damage. And this is particularly acute in many parts of the agricultural system in India, for example, in the Punjab in particular, where the over application of pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers is destroying the ecosystem and breaking apart all the initial benefits that things like the Green Revolution brought. Next slide. And then more locally at home in landscapes like in the UK, we're also seeing an ongoing decline of nature. And in this case, it's often been the intensification of farming that occurred, the tidying up of the mess. Nature needs messiness and corners to survive, and the removal of hedgerows, the expansion of fields, so combine harvesters and others can work there, has been, and the increasing use of chemicals and applications has been causing a decline of nature. Next slide. And this is a global pattern. This is a map of what we call biodiversity intactness. And you can see red are areas where there's been a substantial breakdown of nature in terms of biodiversity and all the interactions that biodiversity provides. And you can see red all around the world, whether in the UK, in the Punjab area, or in other parts of the world. So it's a global problem and a global phenomenon that we need to address. Next slide. And many of us have been aware of how much COVID has overturned our lives and normality, and it came out of nowhere in some sense. A few years ago, we never would have imagined we would be where we are now. And one thing that is increasingly apparent that there are slower burning phenomena that are also threatening to unweave the business as usual, the life that we've come to expect over the last century as the normal way of being. And climate change is certainly one of those that we need to address with urgency, but also biodiversity collapse matters, because nature is not simply an external thing that we can admire pretty species or look at pretty forests. It's the web of life that underpins all of human society, all of activity on the planet. So if we start tearing apart that web, ultimately it comes back and cascades on us in lots of unpredictable and negative ways. So it's very important that we stop and then reverse this decline in global biodiversity, because it's a longer term phenomenon, but over the century to come, its consequences could be profound and immense. Thank you. Next slide. And as an example, the World Economic Forum, which are the people that run the big Davos meeting in Switzerland every February, every year they produce a global risks for assessment. I'm trying to understand what are the major risks to our global society, to our global civilization. And they have two axes. The x-axis here is likelihood of that risk, and the y-axis is impact. And this was done at the start of 2020. And here in the bottom left, you have things that we normally dominate the news cycle: economics, inflation, terrorist attacks, things that are part of what our day-to-day news cycle is about, was about until last year. And at the top right, the really important global risks, and these are economists, these are major world leaders that are driving this, not eco advocates, and they argue that climate change, extreme weather, biodiversity loss are the deeper fundamental risks that our society faces. And they don't get everything right. If you look at, this was done a year ago, infectious diseases was down here as quite moderately low likelihood. Now we'd certainly place infectious diseases up there in the top right as well. And it shows even the world's leaders and elites are recognizing the importance of dealing with biodiversity loss. Next slide. And however, there is potential to reverse this. There are opportunities now in the last few years that haven't existed for decades for a major renewal of the natural world. And part of that comes from recognition of how important it is to renew the natural world. Part of that comes from recognizing how nature and climate change are interlinked, that we need to deal with climate change. That's widely recognized. And restoring nature, protecting nature is a key part of addressing climate change. And this concept of nature-based solutions, of reforesting, of protecting natural ecosystems as part of the solution to both mitigating climate change and adapting to climate change is now increasingly recognized. And that also means there's much more potential funds available, resources available to restore nature at scale. Next slide. And this study came out last year and looked at what would it take to reverse the decline that we're on. So the black line is where we've been in the recent past. The grey line is a path that we're on over this century if we don't change the way we think about nature. And that's ongoing decline, a depauperate world, depauperate animals, and breaking apart in terms of the basic functions it provides for us. And then they looked at what we could do if we put in a lot of conservation efforts into protecting areas, reforesting areas, and that certainly could halt the decline and plateau things out so that we're beginning to flatten out. But on its own, it isn't enough to cause a reversal and an increase of nature. And then they looked at what we need to do as consumers of goods, how we need to change our patterns of what we consume and how we consume, and change the demand that we put on the natural world. And only if we also include that do we get to the green line and things starting to improve in the natural world. Next slide. And as one example, one key thing is how we use land and how agricultural land is used. So this is a recent study showing that of the habitable land on Earth, which is the top area, about half of global habitable land is used for agriculture. But of the agriculture, 78% is used for farmed animals, meat and dairy, for which only provide 18% of our calorie supply or 37% of our protein supply. So most land is used for meat and dairy, even though only a small fraction of our needs are provided by that meat and dairy. And much less is used for agriculture, but yeah, even though they provide, for plant-based agriculture, even though it provides much more. Next slide. So this is a study that my student Joseph Poor produced a few years ago, looking at, in this case, greenhouse gas emissions, but you could look at any other environmental fact of different foodstuffs. And what you see here is the huge difference that what we eat and what we consume makes. So if you look at beef, there's a lot of variability depending on farm to farm and management practice and things. But on average, the impact of beef is much higher than the average of other meats like pork or chicken, but that's also much higher than the impacts of plant-based foods. And so what this means is not that everybody needs to be vegan, but we all need to think about lowering meat consumption in diets because the environmental footprint of meat is disproportionately high. And there are many ways to do that. And also in terms of aspiration. So we see places like India, where traditionally has had a low meat intake diet, where it's seen as modern and aspirational to have a Western diet with high meat consumption. And actually, that's a pathway to disaster, to try and have more and more meat being produced. And we need to recognize that plant-based diets are important both for human health, but also for planetary health. Next slide. So at a very local level, I'm working with partners across my county in Oxfordshire to look at how we can integrate restoring nature in a systematic plan with also reducing the consumption footprint of what we consume and how we consume it, to try and come up with a plan for this county that can also then be replicated and compared with other counties. Next slide. And for my last slide, I was going to talk a little bit about engaging as visible minority ethnic groups in the nature restoration, and Helena covered this far more wonderfully than I could in a slide or two. But I wanted to add one or two points that I think are really key. Firstly, the environmental movement needs ethnic diversity. It needs a value of different traditions, different spiritual values, different contexts. They themselves can strengthen the environmental movement and the environmental issues that are addressed both in the UK and internationally. It is a very European, North American, white-dominated movement at the moment, but that can change, and it needs to change. And secondly, it is immersion in nature, working with nature is immensely beneficial for the communities themselves. So taking the British Punjabi Sikh community as an example, from being a very rural community in India, it's a very urban community in the UK, very detached from nature in many ways, from the local natural world. And Helena went into many of the reasons why that happens. And that's but this community also has a number of health problems around diabetes, around blood pressure, around things which are partially caused by detachment from nature. And there's a range of studies showing that immersion in nature is so much good for personal and community-based health. And so it's so important for the Sikh community to be engaged in this effort for national restoration, both for the planet itself, but also for the community and the vibrancy and health of that community. Okay, thank you.
You're on mute, Dr. G.
That was an incredible talk, Yadavinda. Very, very provocative. Lots of points came out. You brought out the health issues, the benefits of being out in the countryside. Those three curves of grey, yellow, and was it green, were just priceless. The projection of what could be if we start taking intervention now. So that was a real eye-opener. Quite incredible, actually. So thank you so much, Rita. I'm sure it'll generate a lot of questions in the chat, and I look forward to you addressing the questions later on today. So our next speaker today is Rahmat Kaur Riot, who is an award-winning social documentary photographer and filmmaker. She graduated with a BA Honours in Photography from the Arts University, Bournemouth. Her work aims to amplify the voice of the disadvantaged. Her work has been selected for film festivals, shown in cinemas globally, on Prime Video, exhibited at the Southwark Centre, BBC4, and published in The Guardian and The Telegraph. Rahmat's talk is titled today, What's the Real Cost of the Rice on Your Plate? But before we start the talk, I'm going to show you a short video of Rahmat's documentary called Toxification.
ਦੇਖੋ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਸਾਡਾ ਖੇਤੀ ਦਾ ਧੰਦਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਭਰੋਸਾ ਰੱਬ ਨਾਲ ਹੈ
ਪੈਸਟੀਸਾਈਡ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡੀ ਮਾਰਕੀਟ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਏਸ਼ੀਆ ਦੀ
It's a major problem. We don't have too many years, maybe 2-3 decades, and then everything collapses here.
Green revolution I rather call greed revolution.
ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਤਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਦਵਾਈਆਂ ਰੇ ਫਾਲਤੂ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੀ ਫਸਲ ਮਾੜੀ ਨਾ ਰਹੇ ਜੀ ਪਰ ਉਹ ਖਾਣ ਦੇ ਯੋਗ ਦੀ ਤਾਂ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਰ ਕਰੀਏ ਕੀ ਇਹ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ ਆਮਲੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਭੁੱਕੀ ਖਾਦੇ ਬਿਨਾ ਫੀਮ ਖਾਦੇ ਬਿਨਾ ਉਹ ਖੇਤ 'ਚ ਕੰਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਔਰ ਉਹ ਖਾਊਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਖੇਤ ਚੱਲੂ ਉਹੀ ਇੱਕ ਰੂਟੀਨ ਬਣ ਗਿਆ ਸਾਡੇ ਖੇਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਡੀ ਜ਼ਮੀਨ ਦਾ
ਮੇਰਾ ਜੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਬਸ ਮੈਂ ਖੁਦਕੁਸ਼ੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਨਹਿਰ 'ਚ ਛਾਲ ਮਾਰ ਕੇ ਮਰ ਜਾਣਾ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਟਰੱਕ ਦੇ ਥੱਲੇ ਆ ਜਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਜੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੁਣ ਮੇਰਾ ਬੁਰਾ ਹਾਲ ਆ
ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਡੈਡੀ ਮੁੱਕਿਆ ਇਹ ਛੋਟੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੋਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਸੁਰਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਇਹ 8 ਸਾਲ ਦੀ ਸੀ ਮਨਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਤੇ ਇਹਦਾ ਡੈਡੀ ਕਰਜ਼ੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਦੁਖੀ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਸੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਔਖਾ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਸਪਰੇਅ ਪੀ ਲਈ
Once we overexploit the soil, the water, and we pollute the air, we are bound to pay the price. We are actually committing crimes. We can sow a seed and see it grow, and it gives a great amount of joy to see that miracle of nature that is reproducing itself on a daily basis. It is marvelous. The farmer is someone who can be independent, and he can be his own master actually on his own land. We have a legacy to leave for the next generation, so it is our duty to work with nature.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to have been invited to speak at this event. I've been following the work of Eco-Sikh for many years now, so really grateful to be speaking here and really enjoyed the other conversations that have happened before me. So thank you very much. Just a quick intro to myself. So yeah, my name's Rahmat Kaur and I am primarily a filmmaker as well as a photographer. And I kind of firmly believe that everyone on this earth is put here for a reason and we are given a specific kind of skill set with which to do our work to make the world a better place. That's something that I really firmly believe in, and so for me I feel blessed to have been given skills within filmmaking and photography, and so that's the mode that I use in order to do my work, and essentially my work is based around raising the voices of disadvantaged and vulnerable people. And so this is something that I kind of stumbled into. So Toxification is a full-length film. It's a feature film and it's just over an hour long. And I filmed it back in 2014. It's now available on Amazon Prime in the UK and Nishani Plus globally. But yeah, it was a project that was never kind of planned. So if you just head to the next slide. So just a quick kind of recap of the journey of Toxification. So we filmed in 2014, and it was a really interesting journey for me, because being British born and having family who came to the UK via Kenya for a number of generations, my connection with India was kind of not as simple as it might have been. And so I didn't really feel very connected to India before filming Toxification. I had been many times on kind of holidays and things like that, but I'd never really seen farm life in Punjab. And so I flew out with my colleague Leva Questani, and we spent just over a month in India, living in the villages, living on the farms, filming for this documentary. And we had actually initially planned to make a 5-minute film, and as you know, it became much longer than a 5-minute film in the end. It became a full-length kind of feature film. But I think the main reason why it turned from a 5-minute film to an hour-long film is because as soon as we kind of got to Punjab, when we were driving through the fields and things, I had this kind of view of, I had like rose-tinted glasses of how I thought Punjab might look like and how the farmland might look like. And I was so excited to see those lush, fertile, green fields that I had heard so much about. And when we got there, it was October, which is harvest time. And on either side of the roads, it was just black, like it was pitch black. And we found out that the farmers had been burning all of their crops in order to essentially get rid of like the waste after harvest. So they'd been burning their crops, and there was literally just ash on the fields on each side of the roads. And so those rose-tinted glasses came straight off, and it became much bigger than we thought it would be. The main kind of a thing about Toxification, which is different to other films which have been made about Punjab or about environmental issues in that area, is that Toxification brings together 3 main links which kind of come together and lean on each other to create this farmer suicide issue. And the 3 main things are the toxification of the land, mind, and body. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So if you could just head to the next slide. So it's a major problem. 2-3 decades, then everything collapses here. So this quote from the film just shows how we really don't have much time. I mean, again, that quote was captured in 2014, so that's 6-7 years ago now. So we don't have much time. Something really needs to happen in Punjab for it to be saved, for the farmland to be saved. And what's really important about Toxification is that we wanted to create a film which is as neutral as possible. So we hear from agricultural experts, we hear from government ministers, we also hear from the farmers. The film is led by the farmers' stories, because we felt that it wouldn't be right to add a narration or a voiceover, because this story is really the farmer's story and we have to be hearing from them. And that's why I encourage everyone to watch the film just to hear from the farmer's point of view, how they feel and what their experiences are. I think that's the most important thing. If we're not hearing from them and understanding their perspective, then not much can really happen moving forward. And if you head to the next slide. Some people use pesticides without understanding why, hoping their crops won't die. They're not suitable for eating, but what can we do? So there's a huge problem with agricultural chemical overuse, pesticide overuse. That's one of the issues that we discover in the film. That's one of the 3 things that kind of props up this issue, the toxification of the land. And I'm not going to talk too much about it, because I really encourage people to watch it for themselves, because anything I can say, it's much more powerful to hear it from the farmers' mouths. So yeah, I'm repeating their quotes, which is just not as powerful as hearing it from them. So I'm I'm making sure that I've kind of got no spoilers in this presentation because it's really important for me that everyone is able to watch it and hear from them in that way. Okay, next slide. Sometimes the field floods and the crops get damaged. Other times the field dries up. All our hard work turns into mud. The loans pay for the cost of starting all over again. So we're touching on this idea of farmers taking out loans in order to support themselves. The thing about farming is it's so reliant on the weather. And just, I mean, for instance, when we went in October of 2014 to film Toxification, all of the farmers were thrashing the wheat and rice by hand. So you saw in the clip, they were literally thrashing it on an oil drum by hand, and we were saying, "Oh, this is so great! It's, you know, it looks so beautiful." And actually, one of the farmers said, "No, this is terrible." And I was like, "Oh, why? You know, what's happened? Why would this be terrible?" And he said, "Well, we usually use combine harvesters for all of this work. Usually, you know, this harvesting process takes us 2 weeks, but there had been one rain shower 1 week too late. And that rain shower meant that the ground was too wet to use the combine harvesters. They would have just sunk. And so that one rainfall meant literally months of work thrashing rice and wheat by hand. So it's so reliant on the weather. And that's why it can be a really, really difficult situation when you're already on the breadline and you're, you know, really reliant on that harvest to give you exactly kind of what you need. And so often farmers will end up taking loans, which is where it gets really, really difficult for them. The other issue that I'm not going to talk much about is drug abuse in Punjab. It's kind of not as relevant to this talk because this talk is kind of more about the environment. But in terms of toxification, it's one of the 3 most important challenges in Punjab, which has led to farmer suicide. Okay, next slide. We spend 6 months raising each crop like a son, nurturing them day and night. We take our crops to the market. The buyer comes at his whim and buys the crops at his price too. We can't tell him we won't sell for such a low price. I take time off work to wait at the market, and the crops don't sell for 2 days. So this is talking about the Mandi system, which is the system of selling crops. Now, this system, you know, stands to have a lot of changes happening in the next few months, depending on what happens, what kind of the outcome is of the Kisan movement. So the Kisan movement was kind of generated through the passing of 3 agricultural bills, which have the potential to create a really dire situation for farmers in Punjab, especially small-scale farmers. So this Mandi process, this buying and selling process, might be drastically changed. But I think the most important thing for me is that this situation was very, very difficult even in 2014, and it hasn't got any easier. So this is a situation that farmers have been struggling with for many years. And if you want to find out more about the Kisan movement and about kind of what's been going on at the moment, you can check it out online. savingpunjab.org is a really good resource for that. Okay, next slide. Approximately 60% of India's population works in the agricultural industry, and nearly 85% own less than 5 acres of land. So most of India's farmers are small-scale farmers, and this, you know, the agricultural bills which have been passed stand to really, really weaken their livelihood. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, and there's lots of speculation, and there are some people who believe that it might be positive for the farmers of Punjab. There are some people who believe that it might not be so positive, but we don't know. I think, yeah, the main thing for me is that it's not been easy anyway. This is not an easy situation, and I'm not sure if it will get easier. Okay, so you can head to the next slide. We have a legacy to leave for the next generation. This is the only sustainable way of farming. I'm sure it doesn't take a genius to figure out what Darshan Singh is referring to, a sustainable way of farming. But I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to kind of spoil the film for anyone. But I think it is really important for us as consumers to have a think about where we're getting our food from, and just evaluate whether there are any choices that we can make differently in order to support farmers all over the world, because this is an issue which is happening in England as well. I know that farmer suicides in England are, becoming more and more of an issue. So just having a think about where my food comes from and seeing if I can make different choices with that. Okay, and the last slide. So finally, you can find me and the film at Toxification Doc on social media, and you can find details at toxification.com. Please do watch the film. It's called Toxification. You can search for it on Amazon Prime in the UK and USA, and it'll come up. And if you're not in the UK and USA, you can find it on Nishani Plus. So please do watch it. Please do educate yourselves and share this film, spread the word. I think it's really important not only that we understand what's going on now with the farmers movement, but also that we understand the context behind that. And although Toxification was filmed in 2014, it's not dated, in any way, because all of these issues are still very current and very apparent now. So please do watch the film and share it with friends and family, and feel free to get in touch with me if you'd like to. Thank you very much to everyone listening, and I look forward to the Q&A session.
That was a fantastic talk, Graham, very emotional, from the heart. And, I think it's quite easy to start crying during the presentation, because, those farmers are going through a heck of a lot. So many things stacked against them. And it's just, it's a miracle that, things are still continuing in Punjab. And let's keep our fingers crossed that the Kisan movement is successful, because, they deserve it. So thank you so much. So I'm going to hand you over now to Amritpal Singh from EcoSikhUK. He's going to be sharing a slide for you to go to. Amritpal, take over. Yes, sorry. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hardeep Singh. So this is a short poll quiz that you can do on your phone or your laptop. So please go to menti.com and type in the code that you can see there, 57596506. It's easiest to do this on a different device to the one you're using for the conference, but you can flick between the two. The quiz will progress at the same pace as the slides in the presentation. So if you accidentally close the tab for the quiz, don't worry, just rejoin and you'll be at the same place as everyone else. There aren't any points, despite what the slides will say. This is just to have a look at your knowledge, but also just something that's really eye-opening. After the first general question, you'll be asked to type in your name. So just type in your first name. So just join as you can. Okay, so the first question there is, in which town or city do you live? So it's just a general question, really, just to see where you live. So as expected, quite a few people from major cities in the UK. There's quite a few people. We've got Dublin there as well. Ruther Glen, I've never heard of. But yeah, it's quite a diverse group of people, and people from all sorts of locations. Okay, I think that's slowed down now, so we'll move on to the next one. So yeah, if you all enter your names, I think I'll just give you a few more seconds just to put in your names. Okay, and then we'll go into the first question. Just a few more popping up there. Great, okay. So yeah, it's going to say correct answers. Don't worry, there's no points. how much emitted carbon is the average person in the UK responsible for every year? So we've got 1.9 tons, 4.7 tons, 8.34 tons, or 19.8 tons. So just select your answer, and then we'll reveal which one's the correct one after a few seconds. So in the brackets, it's the number of trees needed to abate that amount of carbon. So there's a range there. This is per person every year in the UK. Okay. And the correct answer there, which is 8.34 tons. So 1.9 tons is India, 4.7 is the global average, and 19.8 tons is the US average. Next question. Okay, according to the World Resources Institute, the equivalent of how many football pitches worth of trees are lost in the Amazon rainforest every day? About 15 football pitches, about 150 football pitches, about 1,500 football pitches, or about 15,000 football pitches. So that's the amount lost, sorry, not in the Amazon, in primary rainforest in the world every day, not just the Amazon, but primary rainforest. So primary rainforests, which are important areas of mature rainforests for biodiversity and carbon storage. Yeah, a lot of you correct. It is 15,000. Really shockingly, that's 3.8 million hectares lost every year. And on to our next question. According to the UN Environmental Programme Food Waste Index report, what percentage of global greenhouse gases are due to food waste? So all global greenhouse gases due to food waste. Is that 1 to 3%, 4 to 6%, or 8 to 10%? So this is food waste after production. So we're not talking about the farming side, we're talking about once it's been produced, after it's been produced and it's in circulation and it's been sold, the amount that is all global greenhouse gases that are due to food waste. Surprisingly, it's 8 to 10%. Not surprisingly for a lot of people, but it is 8 to 10%, which is quite significant. Our next question, again, links in very closely to what Rehmat's just talked about, which is how much water is needed to grow 1 kilogram of rice? So 1 kilogram, which is about the same size as that packet you can see on your screen. How much water is needed to grow that 1 kilogram of rice? The majority of that water is used for the pesticides and to clear weeds. It's 650 gallons. 70 gallons is equivalent to a bathtub, and 20 gallons is the equivalent to a 5-minute shower. Okay, so this is just a general question, really, and you can use multiple answers, really. So in the last of the questions, we're asking what aspect of or aspects of climate change and ecosystem conservation are you most interested in being involved in? So there's lots of different areas you could be interested in, so you can select multiple answers if you want. EcoSikh are involved in multiple ones of these as well, and we welcome friends of EcoSikhUK to join us in making a difference in these areas. So lots of diverse interest there as well. So you can see you can get involved in multiple different areas. It's not just planting trees, but also being involved in local community projects, as well as your own personal ethical consumerism, your other green challenges about limiting water usage, or just becoming more educated in it. And of course, you can have a career in it. And there are lots more interesting ways of getting careers in this now. So thank you very much for your participation in that quiz. Really insightful. And I really hope you enjoy the Q&A session. Back over to Dr. Hardeep Singh. You're on mute.
Yep. Well, thank you. That was amazing. Very revealing in terms of, quite shocking, those questions, and in terms of how much consumerism is damaging the environment. It's a real surprise there. I think eye-opening scenario. So I'm going to be passing over to now Amritpal, to Pravjot Singh and to Amandeep for the QA. So if we can ask our speakers to unmute their screens, please. And so there'll be Yadvinda, Raman, and for Helena to take questions. So if the team can pose questions now to the speakers. Thank you.
Hi all. So just looking through, obviously, the chat that's been going on, there's quite a few interesting questions that have come up. We've selected a few, obviously looking at the time, I'm not sure how many we're going to be able to get through, but the first question I'd like to put to Helena, or any of the other speakers, if they want to jump in at a later stage, is how do communities from visible minority ethnic groups overcome the barriers to accessing these natural spaces? So I think essentially, how do we get to VME groups to access green spaces and encourage them?
Okay, so there are some really obvious things that the communities themselves can be doing. I think someone touched on how the environmental sector needs to change. And so we've got fundamental issues that as communities we can't really overcome ourselves, which is to do with the fact that only 0.6% of environmental professionals are BME. You know, I mean, that's, I think the only sector that's worse is gardening. So if we've got a sector that is excluding us, not just because you know, of things of the past, which it is true, but also because they're not prepared to change, then it does make it difficult. But there are things that people within the communities can do. So look out for events. There are more and more events being run. And I think that maybe people within probably South Asian communities in particular are seen, from our point of view, to be more reluctant to you know, allow their children to attend camps and things like that, maybe compared to Somali or Sudanese communities. We don't know exactly why that is, but there are lots of things that you can do. So on Maya's blog, there's actually April last year, she wrote 30 days of what you can do to get your kids out into nature. And there's or just engaging with nature. So there's lots of things that you can do, even if you're in a block of flats. You can be looking up, you can be looking at the sky, you could be listening to dawn chorus. But in terms of getting outside, you can be using Google Maps maybe, or Google Earth to identify green spaces that maybe you don't know. If you're worried about spaces, or you know, you're worried about hate crime or that kind of thing, it's very rare. But if you're worried about it, then choose places that have phone reception, you know, places where the car parks are, maybe there's a cafe or something else that brings people to that area, so that you're not driving to an isolated spot and parking your car with a couple of other cars and, you know, feeling nervous, because you can't enjoy yourself when you're feeling nervous.
Thank you for that great answer, Helena. Next question I'd like to put to Yadvinder. Where do we start? What will have the most impact on reversing the decline of biodiversity? Can I give you maybe a minute to answer that, please?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think we have to start at every little strand. Certainly, I think in terms of our personal actions and in terms of our consumption pattern, but also engaging with our local communities and with local nature and in all the ways that we've heard. But also, I think a big part of that is also making our voices heard at the national level and political level and at the international level as well. And ultimately, the changes that we need aren't going to happen because a small fraction of the population decides to eat less meat or live a more ethical lifestyle. It's only going to happen if society and the infrastructure around society and the values that society places on biodiversity, all of those things change. So we also need to make sure that our community leaders, our political leaders are on board, are going to get this message. And you know, there are signs for hope. The UK, as has been mentioned, is chairing the COP26 climate negotiations later this year in Glasgow. That's going to be a big event in terms of really setting the agenda for climate change. And the UK government is wanting to show leadership. It is wanting to show that actually its actions match its words on that side. So there's a real opportunity here to really push for some quite ambitious plans and targets.
Great, thank you. Another question, this one to Ramit, please. So Punjab's farmers have so much stacked against them. What can and should we be doing to put the odds in their favour? Can I give you another minute to try and answer that for us, please?
Yeah, it's a really, I'm afraid it's not an easy answer, and it's quite a challenging thing to know how to support and how to help. For me personally, as I said, I've been kind of looking at where my food comes from as a way of kind of supporting farmers globally. I know there are charities who work in Punjab with the farmers crisis. But for me, I think it has to be a much bigger solution. I think there has to be a large-scale solution, and I'm working with Saving Punjab to try and kind of figure out what that might look like and lend my support in any way possible. But what we're thinking is to create a model town and to bring in some more sustainable agricultural techniques into that area and just see how they work out. And I think it's also important that the solution is tailored to each area, because different parts of Punjab are suffering in different ways. So I know that Saving Punjab have currently got like a form that people can fill in to find out what the situation is in each area.
Great. I know we are short of time, but I've just got a couple of questions. Give us 5 more minutes, guys. Stick with us. So a couple of questions probably for us, really. Someone asked how much space is required to plant 550 tree mini forests, and the minimum for that is 10 by 10 meters. That will allow us to plant 550 trees with the Miyawaki technique. Also, someone asked a question, can the presenters share their slides? Can I get the presenters to obviously either send us their slides, and if anyone is interested in the slides, please get in touch with us and we can forward that on to you after the conference. Just a final question, I think, for Ramit or Professor Yadvinder. Do you have any data on the extent to which regenerative farming ideas like permaculture design making any progress in Punjab? Can I get Yadvinder to answer that first quickly?
I'm afraid in the context of Punjab, it's not something I've really looked into closely. Whether Ramit has a...
Great. Ramit?
Yeah, similar thing with me. I think in terms of sourcing an organic farmer for our film, it was incredibly difficult. So the sense that we got is that organic farming is quite rare in Punjab. And so I don't know if any kind of analysis would really reflect, because there are so few organic farmers. I don't know if it would be possible right now, but hopefully in the future that would be, something that's possible.
Great, thank you. I think that's the end of the question and answer session. I'd obviously like to take this forward now and obviously try and conclude in terms of the conference itself. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us today. It's been an amazing event, and it's been amazing to see the variety of people who've joined us today. This really does show that climate change affects us all, no matter where we're from, who we are, what faith we follow, no matter where we live. Guru Granth Sahib Ji tells us, "Apan hathe apna ape hi kaaj swariye." We are the problem. Therefore, I think we must become the solution. We need to find ways to stop climate change. Please do get in touch with us on our social media, as you can see on the slide right now. We are looking for enthusiastic people to join us to spread the message of the environment so that we can all work together in helping saving Mother Earth, the only mother without which none of us can survive. Whether it be planting trees, educating people, or just help us spread the message online, please get in touch with us. We would like to finish off today by showing you a short video of one of our highlight projects when we celebrated Guru Nanak Dev Ji's 550th. It clearly shows the impact faiths working together can have. This project was actually a combination of various organizations such as Holy Trinity Church, Guru Nanak Gurdwara Smadik, Canal and River Trust, Bahu Trust, just to mention a few. So I'd like to just leave you all with a message of Sarbat da Pala, as everything we do for the climate is not just for us individually, but for all. The conference will end after the video. Therefore, I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank you all the speakers and the attendees for joining us today. And I'd like to finish off with a Sikh greeting of Waheguru Ji Ka
We've
Khalsa.
been this week marking 550 years since the birth of Guru Nanak. It's important for our Sikh friends, and because it's important for them, it's important for all of us. And there is so much in Guru Nanak's teaching that chimes beautifully with what we have in the Gospels and in the rest of the Bible. There is no conflict there. It's wonderful to see God working in different places through different faiths.
Obviously, Guru Nanak Dev Ji was the founder of the Sikh religion. His message right from the start, from our first prayer or the Mool Mantra, is Eco-Sikh. Basically, what that means is there is only one God, but the deeper meaning of it is there is nothing but God. So essentially, the nature, the world, the universe, everything is His creation, and He's hidden Himself within this creation. So we've got to look after it. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji's message is we need to live in harmony with His creation.
We started thinking about tree planting and some of the schemes that Eco-Sikh already had planned for the 550th birthday of Guru Nanak. And we thought, well, why don't we look towards planting 550 trees in this area? We were lucky that we had the Canal and River Trust on board, and they of course have ground in which to plant trees. They also have a huge amount of enthusiasm. And we wanted to highlight this whole project by planting one tree in the grounds of the churchyard, which would be shared project between Guru Nanak Gurdwara and ourselves at Holy Trinity Church.
And I'm particularly delighted today to be able to invite Bishop David and Mr. Munn to throw some shovels of earth from the back here in around the tree.
The message it sends out really is, it's not going to take one religion or one person to make a change. It needs to be everyone together, whether you're a Sikh, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, whatever religion you are, whatever caste, whatever you follow, you need to be able to get together and make a positive impact.
We have a tree called an amelanchier. It's got multiple stems rather than a single trunk. And yet when it's fully grown, all those stems will support a single canopy over the top. And we felt it was a wonderful model for what we wanted for this community, of all the different faiths and the non-faith groups supporting this beautiful canopy, which will have blossom in spring, have berries on in summer, and have wonderful colour in autumn.
Those of you who are receiving the plaque will understand that this is a sign.
We were delighted that Bishop David chose this occasion to start the process of handing to all Gurdwaras locally, and I think there are 27 Gurdwaras in this area, to start giving plaques from the Church of England, from David as Bishop, recognising the importance of our working together as the Sikh and Christian communities, and using this occasion of the 550th birthday of Guru Nanak as an opportunity to stress that once again.
EcoSikhUK is part of the emblem, if you like, of what's happening tonight. EcoSikhUK are in the Faithful Friends team, and what you see tonight has grown much out of from Faithful Friends. You see dozens and dozens of people of all different faiths who are coming together in the rain to plant a tree. I mean, isn't it bonkers? But isn't it beautiful?
It's absolutely wonderful to be taking part in this lovely, beautiful organised event. Well done, thank you to the Christian community. And this is, matter of fact, the right word or message of Guru Nanak, which shows equality, diversity, especially in today's world that we're living in. So thank you very much, Church of England and everybody else that's supporting this event today. God bless you all.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining us. Have a good weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.